Shabbat Shalom. So I think at this point, Rabbi Ezra Ende, the rabbi of our sister congregation in Kiryat Yovel in Jerusalem at Kehilat Dror in Jerusalem, does not probably need an introduction, as he has been here. We had a little COVID interlude. In fact, I think the last time I saw you face-to-face, maybe Deb and I were in Jerusalem visiting, right before COVID struck, and then we had to go get the kids at the airport because they sent them back from Israel. But I think that Ezzy is a familiar face in perhaps a part of Jerusalem that's a little bit less familiar to some. But it's always really a pleasure. We have had the privilege of being part of the communities that support, I don't want to say our fledgling reform movement, because the truth of the matter is the reform movement is very well established in the state of Israel, and our message is getting out there. There are, of course, a lot of structural issues that make it, for those who've taken any of the Israel classes I've offered, that make it a little bit of a challenge. So I'll stop talking and invite Rabbi Ende to come on up and share an update with us. Welcome, Shalom Aleichem. Bakasha. Right into them. There's your mic. It's live and active.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
It's wonderful to be here and to pray with you. You know, that doesn't matter where you are. When you pray, you're home. And this is really something that helps us understand the word makom. We know that makom, a place, is one of the names of God. And we feel in place when we pray. Doesn't matter where we are in the world, we're together, we're home. So thank you for this opportunity to pray with you. This weekly portion is Parashat Shmini. And Parashat Shmini talks mainly about the laws of kashrut. And that reminded me of what happened when I was about 8 or 9. When I was 8, my father took me to the States. My father is originally from Brooklyn. And when he took me to the States, before we left, he said, you know, Ezzy, you have to know that when we're in the States, we're not going to be able to eat everything. You know, we're going to go into places, we might have a tuna fish sandwich, because, you know, the places in the States are not kosher. And that was a shock for me. As a child that grew up in Israel, I was sure that, you know, everybody's like me. And I was sure that, you know, eating kosher is an ethical thing that every person follows. So I was even more in a shock when he told me that some of my family members don't even keep kashrut. And those were the years of Camp David, okay, of the peace agreement with Egypt, and you know, President Carter, and everything, you know, was very exciting, and it also, you know, just made the feeling that we're the center of the world more real. And I was sure that, you know, everything happens in the shadow of God, and we are really the center of the world, and everybody's like us. So when he continued on and spoke about things, I was so much, you know, in a shock. And then I looked at him, and he you know, and said, you know, Abba, you want to tell me that President Carter doesn't keep kosher? And I always tell this story when, you know, we have this experience of sharing our first Jewish memories. Because for me, as a child that grew up in Israel, you know, Judaism was life, the way that I saw it as a little kid. But, you know, realizing that we are a minority in life, in the world, was really a big shock for me. And this is really also something that helped me understand that this is one of the ways that I define myself. And it's very, very central concerning being Jewish. We know that, you know, that in Hebrew, the word for defining is hagdara. And the word Hagdara, definition, has the word Gader in it. And that means that you define yourself by what you do or don't do, but you draw a fence around you. And that's a physical definition of who you are. So concerning the laws of kashrut, when you choose how you behave, it's not something that has to do with ethics, okay? I don't think that the laws of kashrut are ethical. It's not more ethical to eat a cow than to eat a pig. But those are just chukim. Those are things that really define who we are, but by how we behave. And everybody draws the line in a different place. For example, I keep kosher, but I do eat vegetarian and dairy things in unkosher places, okay? Some people, keep kosher style. Some people will not go into unkosher restaurants, and that really defines who they are in a very, very physical way. How much do they mingle with the outer society? Where do they draw the line? And it's very, very meaningful concerning the way you live your life. So, it helps us understand that we define our Jewish identity in physical ways and not just in ideological ways, okay? And this is something very, very real when you're in the States, but not only in the States, because in Israel there are quite a few places that are not kosher as well. And this also, I remember that when I was here a long time ago, Harav, the one that talks about, the alternative kosher, what's his name again? He spoke over here. Aaron, right, spoke over here because, of course, the laws of kashrut in Israel and everything that goes on is also a political thing, right? Do you follow only the kashrut of the rabbinate, or do you choose dafka to eat in places that are not, supervised by the rabbinate? Those are all very, very meaningful questions that really define who you are. And the definition, this time is not about how you see or understand things, it's about what you choose to do or not to do, even if that is not something that is necessarily ethical, but it's just a law. It's just the way you live your life. We know that in Judaism we have chukim, and those are laws that you follow because they define who you are and not because of ethical reasons. And then there are mishpatim, commandments that have to do with, meaning, that there is a certain cause behind them, like honoring your parents or treating your friend in an honorable way. So there are mishpatim, laws that are based upon, a certain cause or a certain value. And then there are chukim, laws that define who you are by what you do or do not do, and one of them is kashrut. So in Israel, of course, we define our Jewish identity in different ways. And when I met, the kids in religious school just 2 days ago, and I came here, I didn't know what I'm going to speak about because I wanted to know which questions would be raised. And it was very, very interesting that the topic that we spoke about, and that came from the students, is, what is a Jewish state? How do you define a Jewish state? And we spoke about the law of return. And again, in Israel, the Jewish homeland, you need to define, who can be a citizen. And under the law of return, as you know, there is a legal definition of being Jewish, which is not necessarily the definition by Jewish law. And that is, if you have a Jewish grandparent, doesn't matter if it's maternal or paternal, you are eligible for immediate Israeli citizenship under the law of return. And we know that in the reform movement in the States, there is an acceptance of the patrilineal descent. And that means that you are a Jew not only if you have a Jewish mother, but also if you have a Jewish father. That is actually something that is not accepted by the Israeli reform movement. So there are some differences. And this is also a very important question today because, as you know, we are dealing with a war in the world. And we are a people that really suffered, and we were refugees. And now it's our turn to accept these refugees. And these people, some of them might be eligible for an Israeli citizenship under the law of return, but some of them are not. Now, it's not that we have waves of refugees, of Ukrainian refugees in Israel. Most of the refugees that come to Israel have family members in Israel because Europe is much more appealing for them, okay? They do not necessarily want to come to Israel. They have better places to go to or closer places to go to. But there are some people that, come to Israel, and then there's a question, what do we do? And you guys, I'm sure you guys heard about it. And there are different voices of what should be done. And of course, the reform movement in Israel supports, the fact that we should, accept all of them because they are refugees, and we are a people that, all of us were refugees at one point of time. And this is our obligation. This is what we stand for. And it's very, very interesting because the whole question of, identity, Jewish identity in Israel, is a legal question as well, as you guys know. And in Israel, we have an ID card. In the States, you don't have one. But in Israel, everybody has an ID card. And in the ID card, around 25 years ago or so, there was also a mention of nationality. What is your nationality? Because we know that Judaism is not only a faith, it is a people, and it's a nationality. And back then, it said that your nationality is Jewish or your nationality is Muslim, which is an interesting thing because we view our religion as nationality. Doesn't mean that, the Arabs might, view their nationality as Muslim, or the Christians might view their nationality as Christian, but that was what was written in the ID card. And it was like that because we do live in a Jewish homeland. Judaism is our nationality. But around 25 years ago, there was, someone that converted in the States, a reform conversion. And this was not accepted by the rabbinate, but they appealed to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court, decided that it should be eligible, and this woman should be, written as a Jew by nationality, because this is what they decided as the right thing to do. When the Supreme Court decided that, then the politicians, and I think it was Deri from Shas, said, forget about the whole nationality thing. We're just going to drop it, okay? So from then on, just because they didn't want, this person to be written as a Jew in the ID card, this really changed the whole thing. So for the past 20 years or so, there's no nationality in the ID card, which is actually a much better thing. This also, makes the whole identity question a very, very interesting question in Israel. What is our identity? What are we obligated to do? And how do we define ourselves as a Jewish people in Israel? Is something that we think about, something that we are busy with in Israel, but it's also something that all of the Jewish people are busy with, okay? How do we define ourselves Jewishly? What do we hold on to in order to really define who we are, in order to worry about a better future? What do we do or not do in order to really hold on to our identity and worry or work for a better future. And I think that this parasha that talks about definitions that are actually physical, because it's kashrut, is something that challenges us. It's something that, helps us think about what do we do or not do in order for us to maintain our identity. And when I come here and I think about the connections that we have with each other, the identity question is very, very strong. We see, as you guys know, and Israel sees in general, the whole Jewish world as part of our land. It's a homeland for the Jewish people. Therefore, we are not only concerned with the Jews that are living in Israel. The establishment of the land has to do with the Jewish people as a whole. And a lot of things that are done by the Jewish people all over the world can determine what's happening in Israel. For example, as I said, the issue with the woman that was converted by the Reform rabbi and came from the States eventually influenced Israel in such a way that now, the Israeli identity legally is not, something that mentions which faith you follow, okay? And this was something that was actually shaped by the American Jewish community in a way. And there's a lot, and there are, many changes and many important things that are decided in Israel by the Jews. Of course, America is the other big center of the Jewish world. And a lot of the decisions that are made through the Reform movement in Israel are made by the Jewish community, mainly in the United States. So there is a lot of influence that really define us as a Jewish people and define our Jewish homeland. And this is really something that is happening. In Israel today, because of the work that we do together, even though it's not something that is very, very known, it's not something that, everybody would think, we actually can convert people in Israel by the Reform movement. And this is something that is accepted by the Ministry of Interior. All of these things happen because of the work that we do together. And it's very, very important for me to come and say that and help all of us understand that we are making a big difference and we are doing it together. And, I can talk about my own community that I did talk about already beforehand, but this is also an example of an area in Jerusalem that is very diverse. But in this diversity now does not only include a Haredi Jewish community and a secular Jewish community, it includes a Reform Jewish community as well. As part of the migvan, this is the word I asked you about before, as part of the colorfulness of the neighborhood, and this is also the colorfulness of Israel as a whole. So in general, what I want to say, and what I always say when I come here, is that we really see our community as a community that looks at you for partnership. The same way that Israel looks towards the Jewish people all over the world as people that are partners, as people that are not quiet partners. You guys are not just sitting here hearing what's going on in Israel and feeling despair. You guys are making an influence, and we are doing it together because we are one community. And we want to invite you to always be a part of the home that we are creating. Be part of the makom. And this is really what we started with. When we pray, we're in the same place. when we work for a better future, for a better Israel, we are in the same place and we are doing it together. So please, I hope that you can hear this invitation for us to continue to do important work together. This invitation to a home that sees you as members. And I hope that you guys can come and visit us in Israel, in Jerusalem, because we really feel that what we're doing is something that impacts all of us as a Jewish world, and of course makes this Jewish homeland a place that we can really feel that helps us to create a better world, create a home that all of us can be proud of, that all of us can feel that is ours. Those are big words, but I hope that you guys understood that we are sincere and we do know that our work does make a difference, and you are very, very important to us. I have some pamphlets over there that have to do with Kihilat Dvar. By the way, Dvar means liberty or freedom. So literally, the name translates to the Free Synagogue of Jerusalem. And this is very, very important to us because we work for a Jerusalem that is liberal, that is colorful, that does allow, the message that there is more than one way to be Jewish. Dafka in Yerushalayim Ir HaKodesh. So please take these pamphlets, consider joining us so we continue to do wonderful and important things together. Toda Rabba.